100 Harley-Davidsons lined up outside the most decrepit apartment building in Millbrook, Texas. Their engines fell silent. 100 riders in black leather stood motionless, staring up at a third-floor window. Inside that room, a gaunt man clutched a dying German shepherd against his chest. His lips were blue from cold. His eyes were red from tears. He thought he'd forgotten how to cry. Why were these tattooed outlaws weeping 12 hours earlier? This same man had counted $8 in his pocket, his last $8 on earth. He'd been ready to end everything. Then he saw the dog bleeding on the roadside. Now, as dawn broke over Texas, the rumble of motorcycles shattered the morning silence like thunder announcing salvation. Sometimes the last $8 you give away become the greatest investment of your lifetime. But to understand this story, we must go back 15 years. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Afghanistan burned under the desert sun when Sergeant Arlen Mitchell first understood what loyalty meant. His convoy of 5 armored vehicles crawled through Kandahar province, dust coating everything in rust-colored powder. Arlen commanded the 3rd vehicle, his rifle ready, his nerves steady. Then Shadow started barking. The military working dog went wild, pulling at his handler's leash, lunging toward the roadside. Shadow's teeth bared, his bark desperate and sharp. Arlen trusted that dog more than any intelligence report. He raised his fist, signaling the convoy to halt. 3 seconds later, the improvised explosive device detonated 10 meters ahead. The blast shook the earth, but no one died. Shadow had saved them all. Arlen owed that dog his life. He never forgot. Coming home should have been a celebration. Instead, it became a slow-motion catastrophe. The nightmare started immediately. Arlen would wake screaming, drenched in sweat, still hearing explosions that existed only in his fractured mind. Every car backfire sent him diving for cover. Every loud noise triggered panic that squeezed his chest until he couldn't breathe. Linda tried to understand. His wife held him through those first terrible nights, whispering that everything would be okay. But months passed, and Arlen only retreated further into his darkness. He couldn't hold their daughter, Sarah, without his hands shaking. He couldn't sleep without medication that left him feeling hollow. "I married you," Linda finally said, her voice breaking. "Not the ghost you've become." The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was 6 years old, too young to understand why her father couldn't stop crying as he signed away his family. Linda took their daughter to California. Arlen had no money for lawyers, no strength to fight. The last time he saw Sarah, she asked when he was coming home. "Soon," he lied. The years that followed blurred together like watercolors in rain. The Veterans Administration lost his paperwork for 18 months. His disability claim sat in bureaucratic limbo, while Arlen's savings evaporated. He lost his job as a mechanic when his hands shook too badly to hold tools. Friends stopped calling. Family members offered thoughts and prayers, but never actual help. By the time his benefits finally arrived, Arlen had learned to survive on almost nothing. $1,200 monthly, $800 for a decrepit room in Millbrook, Texas, $400 for everything else. His PTSD medication cost $200 that insurance wouldn't cover, so he stopped taking it. The nightmares returned with vengeance. 1 week before everything changed, Arlen sat alone in his dark apartment. He held a razor blade, studying his reflection in its surface. The man staring back was unrecognizable, gaunt, hollow-eyed, broken. He thought about Sarah, now 16, probably forgetting he existed. He thought about Shadow, probably dead in some military kennel. He thought about ending the pain. He put the blade down, not because he wanted to live, but because he wasn't ready yet. Then he sold his last military medal for $50. The night bit with teeth of ice as Arlen walked back from the bar. He hadn't drunk anything, couldn't afford even the cheapest beer. He'd gone there for warmth, nursing a glass of water for 2 hours until the bartender's glare drove him back into the cold. 28 degrees, wind cutting through his thin jacket like razors through paper. He shoved his hands into his pockets and felt the crumpled bills. 1 5, 3 ones, $8 total. His fingers counted them again and again, a ritual of desperation. This was everything. His entire net worth reduced to paper that wouldn't buy him 3 days of survival. The VA check wouldn't arrive for another 2 weeks. 14 days of nothing stretched ahead like a death sentence. Then he saw the shape by the roadside. At first, Arlen thought it was garbage, a pile of ice discarded by someone equally desperate. But the pile moved, a slight trembling, barely perceptible in the dim streetlight. He stopped walking, that old soldier instinct flaring despite years of dormancy. Something alive lay dying in the gutter. He approached slowly. The shape resolved into a dog, a German shepherd. Its once magnificent coat now matted and dull, ribs protruding like fingers pressing through cloth. The animal's right front leg was soaked in blood, a deep gash running from paw to shoulder. Its eyes, brown and deep as wells, looked up at Arlen with an expression he recognized immediately: surrender, complete and total surrender. The dog didn't growl, didn't whimper, just lay there, waiting for death or salvation, too exhausted to care which came first. Arlen's throat tightened. He should walk away. This wasn't his problem. He could barely feed himself, let alone a wounded animal. $8 wouldn't save them both. Simple mathematics of survival: spend the money on the dog. Starve himself, just keep the money. The dog dies anyway. Walk away. Just walk away. His feet wouldn't move. The dog's ear twitched, and Arlen saw it, a scar running along the left ear. Puckered and old, his heart stopped. That scar, he'd seen that exact scar 15 years ago in Afghanistan on a dog named Shadow who'd saved his life. Impossible. Shadow had stayed with the military. Shadow was probably dead by now. This couldn't be the same dog. But that scar. Arlen knelt, his knees cracking against the frozen pavement. The dog lifted its head slightly, sniffing the air. Then, with what seemed like enormous effort, it extended its tongue and licked Arlen's hand. The gesture was so trusting, so pure in its faith, that something cracked inside Arlen's chest. Something he'd kept frozen for a decade. His mind raced through arguments. $8 meant 2 days of cheap food, ramen noodles, day-old bread, whatever he could scrounge. Without it, he'd have nothing, literally nothing, not a cent to his name. If he spent this money on the dog, tomorrow he'd wake up completely destitute. But then another thought surfaced, rising from somewhere deeper than logic. What if this is the last good thing you ever do? The dog's breathing was shallow. Blood continued seeping from its wound. Without treatment, infection would set in. The animal might have hours, maybe less. Arlen looked at those brown eyes again and saw something he hadn't seen in years. trust, unconditional trust. "All right," he heard himself whisper. "All right, boy, I got you." He gathered the dog in his arms. 25 kilograms of bone and matted fur, lighter than a healthy shepherd should be. The animal whimpered once as Arlen lifted, then settled against his chest. Its nose pressed into Arlen's neck, warm breath against cold skin. The convenience store glowed 3 blocks away. 3 blocks that might as well have been 3 miles. Each step sent pain shooting through the dog's body, and it would tense, then relax, as if forcing itself to trust this stranger completely. Arlen's arms burned, his back screamed, but he kept walking. The automatic doors whooshed open, and warmth enveloped them like an embrace. Tommy Garcia looked up from behind the counter, his expression shifting from boredom to disgust in seconds. He saw a dirty homeless man carrying a bloody, stinking dog into his clean store. "Hey, you can't bring that in here," Tommy started. "I need bandages." Arlen interrupted, his voice hoarse. "Antiseptic and dog food, whatever I can get for $8. His Tommy's lip curled. "There's a vet 2 miles down the road." "I have $8. Please." Something in Arlen's voice made Tommy pause. Maybe it was the desperation. Maybe it was the way the dog looked at its rescuer with absolute devotion. Tommy sighed and gestured toward the aisles. Arlen moved quickly, grabbing supplies with military precision. Gauze bandages, $3. Antiseptic spray, $2.50. 1 can of dog food, $2.50. He laid them on the counter, still cradling the dog. "That's 8 exactly," Tommy said, almost impressed. Arlen fished out the crumpled bills and laid them flat. His hands trembled as he smoothed each one, as if saying goodbye to old friends. The $5 bill was soft from handling. The 3 ones were crisp, probably from change someone had given him days ago. $8, his last $8 on earth. He pushed them across the counter. Tommy took the money, rang up the purchase, and bagged the items. As Arlen turned to leave, Tommy called out, "Hey, you sure about this? You look like you need that money yourself." Arlen paused at the door. The dog in his arms shifted, licking his chin. "Some things matter more than eating," Arlen said quietly. He walked back into the cold, $8 poorer and somehow richer than he'd been in years. Behind him, Tommy watched through the window, an odd expression crossing his face. He touched the patch on his jacket, a wolf standing on a wheel, Iron Paw's rescue. He'd have to mention this to Marcus tomorrow, but Arlen knew nothing of patches or biker clubs. He only knew that he held a dying dog in his arms, had no money left, and for the first time in a decade, felt like he'd made the right choice. The stairs groaned under Arlen's weight as he climbed toward his 3rd-floor apartment. Each step sent vibrations through the ancient building, wood creaking like bones of a dying creature. The dog in his arms tensed with every wound, then relaxed, forcing itself to trust this stranger who had chosen poverty to save its life. 3 flights had never seemed so long. Arlen's arms burned with the strain of carrying 25 kilograms of wounded animal. His back spasmed, muscles screaming for relief. But he didn't stop, couldn't stop. He'd made his choice back at that roadside, and now he'd see it through. The hallway smelled of mildew and despair. Arlen fumbled with his keys, the dog shifting slightly to allow him movement. The lock clicked, and the door swung open into darkness. His apartment was a testament to failure. 15 square meters of peeling wallpaper and water-stained ceiling, a single mattress on the floor, its springs visible through worn fabric, no furniture except a plastic chair and an overturned milk crate serving as a table. The window, cracked and taped, let in ribbons of cold air that made the plastic sheeting he'd hung flutter like trapped ghosts. Arlen laid the dog gently on his mattress, the only soft surface in the entire room. The animal looked up at him, those brown eyes reflecting the dim streetlight filtering through the dirty window. In that gaze, Arlen saw something that made his breath catch. Not fear, not pain, trust. Pure, unconditional trust. When was the last time anything had looked at him like that? His wife had stopped trusting him when the nightmares began. His daughter had trusted him to come back, and he'd failed her. The VA didn't trust him enough to process his paperwork. His former friends didn't trust him to hold himself together. Everyone had given up on Arlen Mitchell. But this dog, bleeding and starving, looked at him like he was salvation itself. "Okay, boy," Arlen whispered, his voice cracking. "Let's get you fixed up." He opened the plastic bag from the convenience store, laying out his $8 purchases like surgical instruments: gauze bandages, antiseptic spray, 1 can of dog food. His entire fortune spread across the filthy floor. Arlen filled a dented pot with water from the bathroom sink, the only utility that still worked since they'd cut his heat for non-payment. He warmed it on his ancient hot plate, the coils glowing orange in the darkness. When steam rose, he soaked a piece of gauze and returned to the dog. "This is going to hurt," he warned. The dog's eyes never left his face. Arlen began cleaning the wound, dabbing gently at the caked blood. The dog whimpered, its body tensing, but it didn't snap or pull away, just endured the pain with a stoicism that reminded Arlen of wounded soldiers he'd treated in Afghanistan. The memory hit him like a flashback. Another wound, another time. Private Jenkins, 19 years old, shrapnel embedded in his thigh. Arlen had cleaned that wound with the same careful movements, talking steadily to keep the kid calm. Jenkins had made it. He'd gone home to his family. Arlen had gone home to lose his. He shook off the memory and focused on the task. The wound was deep but clean, probably from barbed wire or broken glass. No debris inside, which was good. Infection was still a risk. But if he could keep it clean, the dog might survive. The antiseptic spray made the dog jerk, a sharp yelp escaping its throat. Arlen murmured apologies, his free hand stroking the matted fur soothingly. Once the wound was disinfected, he wrapped the gauze carefully, securing it with the small strips of medical tape included in the package. "There," he said, sitting back. "Not bad for field medicine." The dog's tail wagged weakly, once, twice, a small gesture of gratitude that meant everything. Arlen opened the can of dog food, the smell of processed meat filling the tiny room. He set it in front of the dog, expecting the starving animal to devour it immediately. Instead, the dog sniffed at the food, then looked at Arlen. It didn't eat, confused. Arlen pushed the can closer. "Go on, it's for you." The dog just stared. Then Arlen understood. Military working dogs were trained never to eat unless their handler ate first, a safety protocol to prevent poisoning. This dog had been trained. This dog had served. Arlen's last food was a half loaf of bread, slightly moldy at the edges. He'd been saving it for tomorrow, but tomorrow seemed impossibly far away. He retrieved it from the plastic bag hanging on his door, his refrigerator, and sat beside the dog. He tore the bread in half, setting one piece near the dog food. Then he bit into his portion, the stale bread scraping his throat as he swallowed. Only then did the dog begin to eat. They consumed their meal in silence, two starving creatures sharing what little they had. When finished, Arlen noticed something he'd missed before. The dog's collar, old leather, worn soft by time, had writing on its metal tag. He squinted in the dim light. Iron Paw's Rescue. Below the words, a small plastic pouch was attached to the collar, containing what looked like folded paper. Arlen's fingers moved toward it, curiosity pulling at him, but exhaustion won. Whatever secrets that paper held could wait until morning. What couldn't wait was the cold. The temperature in the room had dropped to match the outside, his breath forming clouds in the air. The dog shivered despite its fur. Arlen looked at his jacket, his only jacket, the one he'd worn in the army, the one that still had his sergeant's stripes. Without hesitation, he removed it and draped it over the dog. The animal sighed, a sound of pure relief. Arlen lay down beside the dog, wearing only a thin shirt. The cold bit into his skin immediately, making him clench his jaw to stop his teeth from chattering. But the dog shifted closer, pressing its warm body against his. Shared heat, shared survival. For the first time in 10 years, Arlen wasn't alone in the dark. And somehow that made the cold bearable. Sleep came like a thief, stealing Arlen away from the cold room and depositing him into the burning sands of Afghanistan. The dream felt more real than the mattress beneath him, more vivid than the dog pressed against his side. He was back in the convoy, dust coating everything in that familiar rust color. 5 vehicles crawling through Kandahar province, engines growling like caged beasts. Arlen sat in the 3rd vehicle, rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the horizon for threats that could emerge from anywhere. The radio crackled with static and distant voices. Then Shadow appeared, running ahead of the convoy, barking with desperate urgency. The dog's movements were frantic, purposeful, warning them of danger they couldn't yet see. Arlen reached for his radio to signal a stop, but in this version of the dream, his hand moved too slowly. His voice caught in his throat. The warning came too late. The explosion ripped through the first vehicle with a sound that Arlen had never forgotten. A deafening roar, followed by the screech of tearing metal. Fire bloomed orange and black against the desert sky. Men screamed. Shadow kept barking, but now the sound was lost in the chaos. Arlen ran toward the burning vehicle, his boots pounding against the packed earth. Bodies lay scattered like broken dolls. Private Reynolds, barely 20, stared at the sky with eyes that would never see again. Sergeant Cooper clutched his stomach, trying to hold in what should have stayed inside. Blood soaked the sand, turning it dark and sticky. The smell hit him burning fuel, scorched flesh, copper tang of blood. It filled his nostrils, coated his throat, made him gag. He reached for Cooper, trying to apply pressure to the wound, but his hands were slippery with blood. Too much blood, always too much blood. Shadow barked and barked, the sound piercing through the carnage like an accusation. Why didn't you listen? Why didn't you stop them? Arlen screamed. He jerked awake, heart hammering against his ribs like a caged animal trying to escape. Sweat drenched his thin shirt despite the freezing temperature. His breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale forming clouds in the frigid air. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, still half caught in the nightmare, still smelling smoke and death. Then something warm and wet touched his face. A tongue, gentle and insistent, lapping at his cheeks. The dog was awake, its brown eyes fixed on Arlen with concern that seemed almost human. It licked his face again, whining softly as if saying, "You're here. You're safe. I'm with you." Arlen's hand found the dog's fur, gripping it like a lifeline. His fingers trembled as they stroked the matted coat, grounding himself in the present, not Afghanistan, not the burning convoy, a cold apartment in Texas, with a wounded dog who had chosen to trust him. "Thanks," he whispered hoarsely. "Thanks for waking me." The dog settled its head on Arlen's chest, a warm weight that anchored him to reality. But sleep wouldn't return. The nightmare had chased it away, leaving Arlen alone with his thoughts in the darkness. He sat up slowly, leaning against the water-stained wall. The dog adjusted its position, curling against his side. Outside, wind howled through the cracked window, making the plastic sheeting flutter and snap. The temperature had dropped further. He could feel it in his bones, in the way his breath hung in the air like small ghosts. "You know," Arlen began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I used to be somebody." The dog's ear twitched, turning toward his voice, its head tilted slightly, the universal canine gesture of attention. "Had a wife, beautiful woman, Linda, smart, kind, way too good for a grunt like me." He laughed bitterly. "She believed in me. Can you imagine that? Thought I'd come home and we'd build a life together. White picket fence, the whole dream." The dog whined softly, encouragingly. "And Sarah, my little girl, she was 6 when I left. 6 years old with pigtails and this laugh that could make the worst day better." Arlen's voice cracked. "She used to run to the door when I came home, jump into my arms like I was her hero." He fell silent, memories washing over him like waves of pain. Sarah's face, round and trusting, her small hand in his. The way she'd say, "I love you, Daddy," before bed each night. "I abandoned her," Arlen said, the words tasting like ash. "Didn't mean to, but that's what happened. Got so lost in my own head, so wrapped up in the nightmares and the fear, that I forgot how to be her father, forgot how to be anyone." The dog shifted closer, its warmth a small comfort against the cold. "She's 16 now. Probably doesn't remember me. Probably hates me for disappearing." Tears welled in Arlen's eyes, hot against his cold skin. "Can't blame her. I hate me, too." For the first time in years, he didn't fight the tears. They rolled down his weathered cheeks, dropping onto the dog's fur. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, years of suppressed grief finally breaking free. The dog endured it all, pressing closer, offering the only comfort it could, its presence, its warmth, its unwavering trust. "You got abandoned too, didn't you?" Arlen asked, his voice thick. "Someone left you on that road to die. We're the same, you and me. Just two broken things nobody wants." The dog looked up at him, and in that moment something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, two souls discarded by the world, finding each other in the darkest hour. Arlen stroked the dog's head gently. "At least we're not alone tonight." But the night grew colder still. By 4 in the morning, the temperature had plummeted to 24 degrees. Ice crystals formed on the inside of the window, delicate patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Arlen's shivering had become violent, uncontrollable. His lips had turned purple, his fingers numb and clumsy. The dog shivered too. Despite its fur and the jacket covering it, its breathing had grown shallow, labored. Arlen touched its wounded leg and felt heat radiating through the bandage. Infection. The wound was getting worse, the bacteria multiplying despite the antiseptic. Without proper antibiotics, the infection would spread. Blood poisoning, fever, death. We might not make it through this night, Arlen realized aloud. Strangely, the thought brought no fear. He'd been afraid for so long of his memories, of his future, of himself. But lying here in the freezing dark with a dying dog pressed against him, fear seemed pointless. If this was how it ended, at least it wasn't alone. At least he'd done one good thing before the end. He pulled the dog closer, sharing what little body heat remained. Their breathing synchronized. Two creatures clinging to life together, outside. The wind screamed like wounded soldiers. "If this is it," Arlen whispered, "at least I saved you. That's something, right? After all the people I couldn't save, at least I saved you." The dog licked his hand weakly. Even dying, it offered comfort. Time crawled past in a haze of cold and exhaustion. Arlen drifted in and out of consciousness, each awakening bringing fear that the dog had stopped breathing. But each time, he felt that warm body against his, that gentle rise and fall of canine breath. Then, at 5:30, the darkness outside began to soften. The sky shifted from black to deep purple, the first hint of dawn brushing the horizon. Arlen watched through the cracked window as colors slowly bled into the world, purple to pink to orange. "We made it," he breathed. "We survived the night." The dog lifted its head, looking toward the window, its ears perked forward, alert despite its exhaustion. Something had caught its attention. "What is it?" The dog whined, tail thumping weakly against the mattress. It tried to stand, its injured leg trembling with the effort. Then Arlen heard it, faint at first, like distant thunder, but growing louder, closer. An engine, no, multiple engines, dozens of them. The sound built and built, a mechanical roar that shattered the early morning silence. "What the hell?" The dog barked, a sound surprisingly strong considering its condition. Its tail wagged frantically, and despite the pain, it limped toward the window. Arlen followed, his frozen joints protesting every movement. He looked down at the street below and stopped breathing. Motorcycles, Harley-Davidsons, their chrome gleaming in the dawn light. One after another they came, turning into the narrow alley, engines rumbling like the heartbeat of some massive beast. 20, 50, 100, they filled the street, the sidewalks, every available space. "I'm hallucinating," Arlen muttered. "Hypothermia. I'm seeing things." But the dog's reaction was too real, too joyful. It barked again and again, tail wagging so hard its whole body shook. It recognized something, someone. Arlen watched as the motorcycles stopped, engines cutting off one by one until silence fell. Riders dismounted, men and women in black leather, patches on their backs, displaying a wolf standing on a wheel. They stood in formation, staring up at his building, Up at his window, one rider stepped forward, a silver-haired man with authority in his bearing. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Rex, Rex, are you up there?" The dog Rex barked wildly, trying to scratch at the window. Arlen stared at the scene below, his frozen mind struggling to comprehend. 100 bikers had come looking for a dog, and somehow that dog had found its way to Arlen Mitchell's arms. The pounding on his door came like thunder, urgent and relentless. Arlen stumbled toward it, his frozen limbs barely responding to his commands. Rex limped behind him, tail still wagging despite the pain in his leg. The barking from the dog had reached a fever pitch, a joyful sound that echoed off the water-stained walls. Arlen's hand trembled as he reached for the doorknob. His mind raced through possibilities. Police landlord. Some cruel joke played by the universe. None of it made sense. Nothing about this morning made sense. He opened the door. 5 people stood in the hallway, all wearing black leather jackets with patches on their backs. At the front stood the silver-haired man Arlen had seen from the window, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek. His eyes were hard but kind, the eyes of a man who had seen suffering and chosen to fight against it. "Rex!" the man shouted, dropping to his knees. The dog launched himself forward, injured leg forgotten. He collided with the man, licking his face, whimpering with pure joy. The man buried his face in Rex's fur, his shoulders shaking. When he looked up, tears streamed down his weathered cheeks. 3 months, boy, 3 months. We've been looking for you." The other bikers crowded the hallway, trying to see. Someone shouted down the stairwell, and Arlen heard the message relay through the building like a game of telephone. "They found him. Rex is alive. He's here." A cheer erupted from below, the sound of 100 voices raised in celebration. The building itself seemed to shake with the force of their joy. The silver-haired man stood slowly, one hand still resting on Rex's head. His eyes moved from the dog to Arlen, taking in everything: the gaunt frame, the hollow cheeks, the lips still tinged blue from cold. His gaze traveled past Arlen into the apartment, seeing the poverty laid bare, no furniture, no heat, no hope. "You," the man said, his voice rough with emotion. "You did this." He pointed to the bandage on Rex's leg, the careful wrapping that spoke of skill and care. Arlen nodded weakly. He was dying. Couldn't just leave him. The man stepped closer, and Arlen noticed the patch on his chest. Marcus Stone, it read, with President beneath it. This was the leader of Iron Paw's rescue. "What did you use?" Marcus asked. "What supplies?" Arlen gestured toward the empty plastic bag on the floor, the antiseptic bottle and remaining gauze visible inside. "Bandages, antiseptic, dog food, that's all I could afford." "How much?" $8. Marcus's jaw tightened. $8? And how much money do you have left? Arlen almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. "Nothing. That was everything I had." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stared at Arlen, something shifting behind his eyes. He looked back at the apartment, at the bare mattress on the floor, the cracked window covered with plastic, the absolute absence of anything resembling comfort or security. Then he looked at the dog, at the careful bandaging, at the jacket that still lay on the mattress, the one Arlen had stripped off his own back to keep the animal warm. You spent your last $8, Marcus said slowly, as if trying to comprehend the weight of those words. To save a stray dog when you have no food, no heat, nothing. He was dying, Arlen repeated, as if that explained everything. To him, it did. Marcus turned to the bikers behind him. Get everyone up here. Now, all of them. The message spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the narrow hallway filled with bodies. More bikers stood on the stairs, craning their necks to see. Others waited below, listening to updates shouted down. 100 members of Iron Paw's rescue, all focused on the third-floor apartment of a forgotten veteran. Marcus addressed them, his voice carrying with the authority of a natural leader. Brothers and sisters, listen to me. Rex has been missing for 3 months. 3 months we've searched, followed every lead, put up flyers across 4 counties. We thought we'd lost him. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. This man, Marcus continued, pointing at Arlen, found Rex bleeding on the roadside last night. He had $8 to his name. $8. That was his entire wealth. His food money. His survival money. The bikers fell silent, sensing something profound coming. He spent every cent of it on bandages and dog food, gave Rex his only jacket to stay warm, went without food himself, without heat, without anything. He saved our dog's life with his last $8, knowing it meant he'd have nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. Then someone in the back began to cry a choked sound of pure emotion. The crying spread like contagion. These were not soft people. These were men and women with tattoos covering their arms, leather worn from thousands of miles on the road, faces hardened by life's cruelties, yet tears streamed down their cheeks unashamedly. Tommy Garcia pushed through the crowd, out his face pale. Arlen recognized him, the convenience store clerk from last night, the one who had looked at him with such contempt. Tommy couldn't meet Arlen's eyes. I was there, Tommy said, his voice shaking. Last night at the store, he came in carrying Rex, covered in blood. I thought he was just another homeless guy wasting money on a stray. I judged him. God forgive me, I judged him. Marcus placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder, but kept his eyes on Arlen. What's your name? Marcus asked. Arlen Mitchell. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He actually stepped backward, his face draining of color. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. The other bikers noticed their leader's reaction, confusion spreading through their ranks. Arlen Mitchell, Marcus repeated, his voice hollow. What unit? Arlen straightened slightly, old military training asserting itself, despite his weakened state. 3rd Infantry Division, Kandahar Province, deployed 2008 to 2010. Marcus's hand went to his mouth. He turned away from Arlen, facing the wall, his shoulders rigid. When he turned back, his eyes were wet with more than just tears. For Rex. Sergeant Mitchell, he whispered. The military title hung in the air. Arlen frowned, confusion replacing his exhaustion. Do I know you? Marcus laughed, but it was a sound devoid of humor, bitter, pained, filled with self-recrimination. You should. I signed your discharge papers. I'm the one who ended your career. The world stopped spinning. Arlen stared at the man before him, his mind refusing to process the information. Then, like a photograph developing in chemical bath, recognition emerged. The face was older, marked by years, and a scar that hadn't been there before. But the bearing, the voice, the way he held himself, Captain Stone, Arlen breathed. Marcus nodded, his face a mask of anguish. I was your commanding officer. When the Pete City evaluation came back, I had orders. Discharge anyone scoring above threshold. You were 2 points over. 2 points. I should have fought it. Should have argued that you deserved better. But I was climbing the ladder, worried about my own career. He stepped closer to Arlen, and now the tears flowed freely down his scarred cheeks. I signed that paper, and I ended your life. You lost everything because I was too cowardly to fight for one of my own men. And here you are, a decade later, starving in a freezing apartment because of what I did to you. The hallway had gone completely silent. Even Rex had stopped moving, sensing the gravity of the moment. And this man, Marcus continued, addressing the bikers but keeping his eyes locked on Arlen. This man that I abandoned, that I threw away like garbage, just saved the life of my dog. Our dog, the symbol of everything we've built. He had nothing, and he gave everything. Marcus dropped to his knees. The sight was surreal. This powerful man, leader of 100 bikers, kneeling before a destitute veteran in a crumbling hallway. Forgive me, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I can't undo what I did, can't give you back the 10 years you lost, but please, let me try to make it right. Let me try to be the man I should have been when you needed me. Arlen looked down at his former commander, the man whose signature had sent his life spiraling into darkness. He should feel anger, should feel rage at this cosmic irony, that the person who had pushed him into the abyss was now kneeling at his feet. But strangely, he felt nothing but exhaustion and a flicker of something he barely recognized. Hope. Rex limped over to Arlen, pressing his warm body against his legs. The brook looked up at him with those trusting brown eyes, then looked at Marcus, then back at Arlen, as if saying, he made mistakes, but so did you. Forgiveness is where healing begins. Arlen's hand dropped to Rex's head, finding strength in that warm fur. Stand up, Captain, he said quietly. Stand up. Marcus rose slowly, hope and fear warring on his face. I don't know if I can forgive you, Arlen admitted. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I'm willing to try. Marcus nodded, accepting what he could get. That's more than I deserve. Behind them, the bikers began to move with purpose. Someone was already on the phone with a veterinarian. Others were unloading supplies from their motorcycles. The machinery of care and compassion had been set in motion, and in the center of it all stood 2 men, one who had lost everything, one who had caused that loss, with a dog between them who had brought them together across a decade of pain. Rex wagged his tail. Outside, the sun rose higher over Texas, painting the sky in shades of gold and promise. The silence in the hallway stretched like a living thing, heavy with decades of unspoken pain. Marcus remained standing before Arlen, his composure slowly returning, though his eyes still glistened with unshed tears. The other bikers had stepped back, giving the 2 men space, understanding that what was unfolding transcended their presence. I need you to know, Marcus began, his voice shouting now. That sign in those papers haunted me every single day since. I told myself I had no choice, that orders were orders, but that was cowardice wrapped in duty. Arlen listened, his hand still resting on Rex's head. The dog had settled at his feet, a warm anchor in the storm of revelations. After you left, I started having my own nightmares, Marcus continued. PTSD doesn't discriminate. Hit me 2 years after my last deployment. Suddenly I understood everything you'd been going through. The panic attacks, the flashbacks, the feeling that your mind is an enemy you can't escape. He laughed bitterly. Karma, I suppose. The universe making me walk the path I'd condemned you for walking. I lost my marriage too. Nearly lost my life to a bottle of whiskey and a loaded pistol. Arlen's eyes widened slightly. The captain he remembered had been unshakable, a rock of military discipline. What stopped you? Arlen asked quietly. Marcus pointed at Rex. Him, or rather, what he represented. I found Iron Paw's rescue 3 years ago. Group of veterans who channel their pain into purpose. We save dogs. Dogs save us. Simple as that. He knelt beside Rex, stroking the dog's scarred ear. But Rex here, he's special. And his story. You need to hear it, Arlen, because it's your story, too. The bikers pressed closer, sensing important information coming. Rex's real name is Shadow, Marcus said. Arlen's breath caught. His hand tightened on the dog's fur. Yes, Marcus confirmed, seeing the recognition in Arlen's eyes. The same Shadow. Military working dog, 3rd Infantry Division, Kandahar Province. After the military retired him, he was supposed to go to a veteran adoption program. The dog who saved countless lives deserved a peaceful retirement. He saved my life, Arlen whispered. That convoy, the Aid. I know. It's in his service record. Shadow detected 37 explosive devices during his deployment, saved over 200 soldiers. But when he came back to the States, nobody wanted him. PTSD dogs, they said, too damaged for civilian life. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. A hero dog, discarded for the same condition as the heroes he'd saved. Then Danny Reeves stepped up, Marcus continued, and his voice grew heavy. Danny was one of ours, Iron Paw's member, a former Marine, Purple Heart recipient, PTSD diagnosis. He adopted Shadow, renamed him Rex as his service dog. They were inseparable. Rex gave Danny a reason to wake up each morning. What happened to Danny? Arlen asked, though part of him already knew. The weight in Marcus's voice told the story. Marcus stood slowly, his joints cracking. He addressed not just Arlen, but all the bikers present. 1 year ago, Danny Reeves took his own life. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even those who knew the story felt its impact anew. He'd been struggling. The VA kept losing his paperwork. His benefits were delayed for months. He couldn't afford his medication. Sound familiar? Marcus looked pointedly at Arlen. He tried reaching out, but the system failed him. We failed him. I failed him. Tears streamed freely down Marcus's face now. After Danny died, Rex disappeared, just vanished. We searched everywhere, put up flyers, contacted shelters, drove hundreds of miles following tips. Nothing. 3 months he's been gone. We thought he'd died of grief. Marcus stepped closer to Arlen, his expression intense. But he didn't die. He's been wandering, searching. And you know what I think? I think Rex was looking for someone. Looking for another soldier who needed saving. The way Danny had needed saving. The way you need saving. The dog looked up at Arlen, those brown eyes deep with understanding that transcended species. Rex found you, Arlen. Out of every person in Texas, this dog found you. The same dog who saved your life 15 years ago in Afghanistan came back to save you again. If that isn't fate, I don't know what is. A female biker near the front suddenly pointed at Rex's collar. Marcus, the pouch, Danny's note, it's still there. Everyone's attention snapped to the small plastic pouch attached to Rex's leather collar, the one Arlen had been too exhausted to open last night. Marcus reached for it with trembling hands. He carefully extracted the folded paper inside, yellowed and soft from months of exposure. He unfolded it slowly, as if handling a sacred relic. "This is Danny's last letter," Marcus said. "His final words. I've read it before, but you need to hear it. Arlen." He began reading, his voice thick with emotion. "To whoever finds Rex, I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough to keep fighting. The darkness won, and I couldn't see any light anymore. Rex was my only friend, the only one who understood. I'm leaving him with iron paws, hoping they'll find him a home better than I could give." Marcus's hands shook, but he continued, "If you're reading this and you found Rex wandering, please know he's special. He won't stay with just anyone. He'll find someone who needs him, someone on the edge like I was, someone about to give up. Rex knows. Dogs always know." The silence was absolute. "Please give him a home. Let him save you like he saved me for a little while. And if you're hurting, if you're alone, if you think nobody cares, know that Rex cares. That's enough. Sometimes a dog's love is the only love that can reach us in the dark." Marcus lowered the paper. "Danny wrote that 1 year ago, and Rex carried these words for 3 months, searching for the person who needed to hear them." Arlen's knees buckled. He collapsed against the doorframe, tears streaming down his face. Rex immediately pressed against him, licking his hands, his face, offering the same comfort he'd given countless times before. "I was going to do it," Arlen choked out. "Last week I had everything planned, just hadn't picked the day." Horror crossed the faces of every biker present. "If I hadn't found Rex last night—" Arlen couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. "But you did find him. Or he found you. Danny's last wish was fulfilled. Rex saved another soldier from the darkness." The moment was shattered by a harsh voice from the stairwell. "What is going on here? This is private property." Frank Hawkins, the landlord, pushed through the crowd of bikers, his face red with anger. He was a heavy man in his 60s, with small eyes that calculated everything in terms of profit and loss. "Mitchell!" he shouted, spotting Arlen on the floor. "I've had enough of this. You're 3 days late on rent, and now you're causing a disturbance. I want you out today. Get your things and leave." The temperature in the hallway dropped 20 degrees. Marcus stood slowly, turning to face the landlord. His posture shifted from grieving friend to protective predator. Behind him, 100 bikers straightened, their eyes hard. "You want to repeat that?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously calm. Frank faltered slightly but pressed on. "He owes me money. This is my building. I have rights." "This man," Marcus said, stepping closer to the landlord, "just spent his last $8 to save a life. He has no food, no heat, and you want to throw him on the street? That's not my problem. Business is business." A young biker near the back shouted, "This guy's a veteran. He fought for your freedom." "I don't care if he's Jesus Christ himself. Frank snapped. "No pay, no stay." The crowd rumbled with anger, fists clenched, tattoos flexed over tightening muscles. Frank finally noticed the danger he was in. 100 bikers, furious and righteous, focused their rage on him. He backed toward the stairs. "This isn't over," he threatened weakly. "I'll call the police." "Do that," Marcus said coldly. "And while you're at it, tell them about the health code violations in this building, the lack of heating in winter, the illegal rent increases you've imposed on a disabled veteran." Frank's face went pale. "We have lawyers, too." Marcus continued. "Good ones. Veterans' rights lawyers who would love to hear about your practices." The landlord fled down the stairs without another word. Marcus turned back to Arlen and Rex, his expression softening. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "None of us are." The transformation began immediately. Marcus raised his hand, and the bikers mobilized with military precision. Years of working together had forged them into a unit that communicated through gestures and understanding, each member knowing their role without being told. "All right, people," Marcus commanded. "We've got work to do. Rodriguez, take a team to the grocery store. Get enough food for a month. Real food, not cheap garbage. Henderson, call Dr. Martinez. Tell her we need a house call for Rex. Full examination, antibiotics, whatever he needs. Williams, you're on repair duty. Get this heater working and fix that window." People scattered like leaves in wind, each driven by purpose. Tommy Garcia stepped forward, his face still pale with shame. "Let me help," he said. "I need to make this right." Marcus nodded. "Go with Rodriguez. You know what a hungry man needs to eat." Within minutes, the apartment buzzed with activity. Someone had produced a portable heater, and warmth began seeping into the frozen room. Others carried in bags of groceries, filling the empty space with colors Arlen hadn't seen in months. Fresh fruits, vegetables, bread that wasn't moldy, meat that wasn't processed. A woman with kind eyes and gentle hands introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Martinez. Iron Paw's veterinarian, she knelt beside Rex, examining him with professional care while speaking soothingly. Arlen watched as she cleaned the wound properly, administered antibiotics via injection, and rewrapped the bandage with expert skill. "He'll be fine," she assured Arlen. "You did good work with what you had. That bandaging saved his life. Without it, the infection would have killed him by morning." Relief flooded through Arlen so intensely that he had to sit down. Rex would live. His $8 hadn't been wasted. Marcus sat beside Arlen on the now clean floor. Someone had swept away the dust and grime, revealing floorboards that actually had color beneath the filth. "We need to talk," Marcus said. "About your future." Arlen tensed. He'd heard those words before, usually followed by disappointment. "Iron Paw's rescue needs a full-time caretaker," Marcus continued. "Someone to live at our sanctuary, care for the dogs, maintain the property. It comes with housing, salary, full medical benefits, including mental health coverage." Arlen stared at him, certain he'd misheard. "We've been looking for months," Marcus added. "Haven't found the right person. Someone who understands both dogs and soldiers. Someone who knows what it means to be broken and still choose kindness. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose." Arlen looked around the room at the bikers working tirelessly. Strangers, hours ago, now fixing his window, stocking his pantry, caring for his dog. His dog. When had Rex become his Rex stays with you? Marcus said, reading his thoughts. That's non-negotiable. He chose you. We don't separate bonded pairs. The weight of the offer settled over Arlen. Employment, housing, health care, a companion who would never judge him for his nightmares, everything he'd lost over the past decade, returned in a single morning because he'd chosen compassion over survival. Why? Arlen asked. I understand gratitude for saving Rex, but this seems like more. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years of regret. I told you I signed those papers. What I didn't tell you was how many other papers I signed. Dozens of soldiers discharged because of conditions the military created in them. I followed orders, climbed ranks, built my career on the broken backs of men and women who deserved better. He rubbed his face with both hands. When my own PTSD hit, I finally understood, lost everything, just like you, but I had resources you didn't, family money, connections. I rebuilt my life while soldiers I discharged were living on streets. Marcus looked directly at Arlen. Iron Paws is my penance. Every dog we save, every veteran we help. It's me trying to balance a scale that can never truly be balanced. But offering you this job, helping you specifically, that's personal. That's me trying to undo the worst decision I ever made. Arlen considered the offer. Pride told him to refuse, to not accept charity from the man who destroyed his life. But Rex pressed against his leg, warm and trusting, and Danny's letter echoed in his mind. Sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was survival. I'll take it, Arlen said quietly. Marcus's face broke into a genuine smile, the first Arlen had seen from him. They shook hands, and somehow the gesture felt like more than agreement. It felt like reconciliation. The morning passed in a blur of activity. The apartment transformed from tomb to home. Someone installed a proper lock on the door. Someone else brought in a small table and chairs. The cracked window was sealed properly, and heating vents were cleared of the debris blocking them. By noon, Arlen had eaten his first real meal in months. Hot soup, fresh bread, roasted chicken. Rex had his own meal, proper dog food, supplemented with the medications Dr. Martinez had prescribed. They ate together, human and dog, no longer starving. As afternoon approached, the bikers began their goodbyes. Each one approached Arlen, shaking his hand or hugging him, expressing gratitude for Rex's life. Tommy was last, his eyes still carrying shame. I'm sorry for how I looked at you last night, Tommy said. I saw a homeless man wasting money. I didn't see a hero. Arlen shook his head. You saw what the world trained you to see. I'm not a hero, just a man who couldn't walk away. That's what heroes say, Tommy replied. Marcus was the final person to leave. He stood in the doorway, looking at Arlen and Rex sitting together on the floor, sunlight streaming through the now clean window. I'll send the paperwork tomorrow, Marcus said. You can move to the sanctuary next week. We'll help with relocation. Arlen nodded. Thank you, not just for the job, for everything. Thank you for saving Rex, for giving Danny's wish meaning, for giving me a chance to make things right. Marcus paused at the threshold. One more thing. Rex carries Danny's legacy now. Every life that dog touches, every person he helps, Danny lives through that. And you, Arlen, You're part of that legacy now, too. Don't waste it." With that, Marcus descended the stairs, his boots echoing on the wood. Arlen sat in the silence that followed, Rex's head resting on his thigh. The apartment felt different now, not just because of the food or the heat or the repairs. Something intangible had shifted. The despair that had permeated every corner had been replaced by something fragile but real. Hope. For the first time in a decade, Arlen Mitchell had a future. 3 months passed like water through open fingers. Arlen moved into the Iron Paws Sanctuary, a sprawling property outside Millbrook with kennels, training areas, and a small cottage that became his home. Rex recovered fully, his leg healing without complication, his coat growing thick and glossy again. They became inseparable, two survivors bound by fate and mutual salvation. Work gave Arlen structure he'd lacked for years. Each morning he rose at dawn, Rex at his side, to feed and care for rescued dogs, German shepherds with battlefield trauma, Labradors abandoned by families, pit bulls rescued from fighting rings. Each animal carried scars, visible and invisible, that Arlen understood intimately. The nightmares didn't stop entirely. Some nights he still woke, screaming, still smelling smoke and blood. But Rex would be there immediately, pressing his warm body against Arlen, licking his face, grounding him in reality. The dog had become his anchor, his reason for waking each day. Marcus visited weekly, and their relationship evolved from uneasy reconciliation to genuine friendship. They would sit on Arlen's porch at sunset, sharing coffee and silence. Two veterans, healing together. One evening, Marcus mentioned that a young biker had filmed Arlen's story on that first morning. The video had been posted on social media with a simple caption, "Veteran spent his last $8 helping stray dog." "It's getting some attention," Marcus said casually. Arlen shrugged. He had no phone, no computer, no connection to the digital world. The attention Marcus mentioned became an understatement. Within days, the video exploded across the internet, 10 million views in the first week. News stations called Iron Paws, requesting interviews. Newspapers ran features. The story of a homeless veteran sacrificing his last dollars for a dying dog touched something universal in people's hearts. Arlen refused most interviews. He wasn't comfortable with attention, with being called a hero. But he allowed one local journalist to visit the sanctuary to see the work being done. The resulting article brought donations flooding in, enough to expand Iron Paws operations significantly. More importantly, veterans began reaching out, men and women struggling with PTSD, with homelessness, with despair. They'd seen Arlen's story and found hope. If a broken man could be saved by choosing kindness, perhaps they could be saved too. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Arlen was grooming a nervous terrier when Marcus appeared at the kennel door, holding a cell phone with an expression Arlen couldn't read. "Call for you," Marcus said. "From California." Arlen's heart stopped. California, where Linda had taken Sarah 16 years ago. He took the phone with trembling hands. Rex sensed his anxiety immediately, pressing against his legs. "Hello." Arlen's voice cracked. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Then a voice, young and female, thick with emotion. Daddy. The word shattered him. Nobody had called him that in a decade. Sarah, he whispered, it's me, Dad. I saw the video. I saw you on the news. Arlen couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he slid down the kennel wall, Rex climbing into his lap. I didn't know, Sarah continued, crying now. Mom said you abandoned us, said you didn't care. But I watched that video, Dad. I saw you give everything for that dog. Someone who does that doesn't abandon their family. I never stopped loving you, Arlen choked out. Never. Not for one single day. I know that now. They talked for an hour, father and daughter, reconnecting across years of separation and lies. Sarah was 16, smart, kind, desperate to know her father. She'd always wondered about his side of the story. Can I come see you? She asked finally. Please? God, please. 2 months later, Arlen stood at the airport. Rex beside him. We were in a service dog vest. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. What if she didn't recognize him? What if she was disappointed? Then he saw her, tall, with Linda's eyes but his stubborn chin. She walked through the terminal, spotted him, and broke into a run. The impact of her body against his nearly knocked him over. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing, while he wrapped his arms around her, holding his little girl for the first time in a decade. I missed you, Daddy, she cried. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Rex barked joyfully, tail wagging, as Sarah knelt to embrace him. Thank you, she whispered to the dog. Thank you for saving him. That summer, Sarah helped Arlen create something lasting, using donations from his viral story. They established Second Chance Ranch, a sanctuary specifically for elderly dogs and veterans with PTSD. The entrance bore a bronze plaque in memory of Danny Reeves. No one should face darkness alone, Linda called eventually, apologizing for poisoning Sarah against him. They didn't reconcile romantically, but they made peace. Sarah would spend every summer and holiday with Arlen, learning to care for animals, healing alongside her father. The story spread further. A book deal, a documentary, speaking engagements that Arlen reluctantly accepted because they raised awareness for veteran mental health. Every dollar earned went back into the sanctuary, and through it all, Rex remained at Arlen's side. The dog who had saved him twice now helped him save others. Danny's legacy lived on through every wagging tail, every veteran who found purpose in the sanctuary, every life transformed by simple kindness. Arlen Mitchell had been redeemed. Sometimes the most profound transformations begin not with what we receive, but with what we choose to give away. Arlen Mitchell stood at the edge of oblivion, holding 8 crumpled dollars that represented his entire existence. And he chose compassion over survival. Oh, that single decision, made in the darkest moment of his life, rippled outward like stones dropped in still water, touching lives he never imagined reaching. His story reminds us that we are never too broken to make a difference, never too lost to find our way back, and never too alone if we open our hearts to those who need us. The dog saved the man, but only because the man first saved the dog. This is the beautiful reciprocity of kindness, the sacred exchange that happens when we stop calculating what we can afford to give and simply give what we have. Whether it is $8, a moment of time, or simply our presence. These offerings matter more than we know. Someone out there is waiting for your version of those $8. Someone needs the kindness only you can provide. What are you holding back that could change a life, including your own? Have you ever experienced a moment when giving away what little you had brought you more than keeping it ever could? Share your story below because your words might be the hope someone else needs to hear today.